Over the last 12 months, the way we think about idle heroes has changed. You'll notice I don't do tier lists anymore, and you'll notice I haven't even done ranking videos in quite some time. That's because when it comes to playing idle heroes, there is no such thing as a best hero. There is just a hero that does the job that you need them to do at that particular moment in time. As well, synergy is far more important than good heroes, because you can have some amazing heroes that don't work well together and be beaten by other teams that have less good heroes, but they have more optimal synergy. So today I'm going to be talking you through a guide to how to approach idle heroes in one particular strategy that will allow you to have one of the best synergistic teams possible. It will take you through your early decisions of who your first heroes should be and who to build up to E5 and who to leave at 9-star and simply use as support. We'll discuss your first Transcendence hero and how to even approach into your second Transcendence hero. As well, we'll be discussing artifacts and of course reasons behind our hero choices and what game modes you'll be using them in and who with. So this should be a very in-depth guide to early and mid-game idle heroes, taking you through the journey from no heroes at all to 2 Transcendence heroes. Let's do this. The first thing you need to understand in idle heroes is that getting an E5 as soon as possible is really important. An E5 hero is a hero who has been upgraded using 9 copies of themselves, 3 other 9 stars, and 3 10 stars. That's a lot of heroes to build as food. Now, food means when you go and take one hero and feed them to another, and I have lots of walkthroughs of me actually playing the game so you can see how this journey works. Go check out the Diamond series, or the VIP series, or even one of my free-to-play series. They may be a little out of date in their early steps, but it will show you how to go through the game and build a first E5. The first thing that will take new players by surprise is that actually building good heroes is not recommended. Good heroes will get you in a trap where you have built lots and lots of really cool heroes that are strong to a high level, and then you'll realize that you need to feed them all together to upgrade another of your heroes. Feeding good heroes to each other is bad, as you can imagine, because it's just removing all the progress you've made and removing all those valuable hero copies. As well, you may find that you get things called chests, and chests are a really important resource where you can pull hero copies. A really big new player mistake is to go ahead and open these chests as soon as you get them for whatever hero you feel like. The best thing you can do, though, is keep them until you have a better idea of who that first E5 is going to be. So my advice is to build 10-star and 9-star fodder heroes until you've accumulated enough hero copies and chests to be able to have 9 copies of one really good hero and then build them straight away. Also, chests are a hard resource for the majority of players, especially if you're a budget or free-to-play player. So the guide I'm going to take you through will talk through very specific heroes that I want you to prioritize your chests on. At no point does that mean you can deviate from these plans, but I would only do so if you just naturally accumulate 9 copies of somebody else that could potentially be used as a different stage to do something else in the game. And then by using soul symbols, a resource you naturally accumulate in the game, you can get rid of the heroes that you built that weren't with this strategy, because then you can use the food that you used to build those heroes to build somebody else. But as I said, you didn't waste any chests because they were heroes that you organically picked up from events or from getting lucky. Now, if you take a quick look at my bag here, you'll notice that I have a lot of things saved up. Specifically, you'll see I have 684 heroic summon scrolls. This is totally normal. When you start the game, you'll get these thrown at you, and your instinct will be to open them as soon as you get them. Don't do that. My advice is to save up 900 and wait for a big heroic summons event such as Christmas or Halloween and go ahead and cash them in to get yourself a rare item which you can find down here called a mysterious artifact selection chest. Now this will contain a rare item which will make your heroes super powerful, and we'll be talking about the ones you want to focus on early on in this video. So I've talked about chests, I've talked about using them and saving them for your first E5, but I haven't told you why a first E5 is important. Well, it unlocks this game mode here called the Void. Now this, most of you, if you're new to the game, won't recognize because you haven't unlocked it yet, but this game mode is really important for one key reason. In this place called the Compass of Transcendence, you will progressively gain a resource up here called Crystals of Transcendence. These crystals are obtained by opening cores, which will get you 5-star hero copies. Another thing you can get is something called a sphere, but you shouldn't pull these for crystals. You should go for stellar shards, as this is a much more important resource. The reason why that's the case is because stellar shards are used to level up heroes, whereas crystals will naturally be given to your account as you progress. The use of crystals is the evolution cube. This, once you get 5 million, will allow you to turn a boring basic hero into a very, very powerful one. And we'll be talking through which of these heroes you should choose and why a little later on in the video. But that is why you need to unlock an E5 hero. To unlock this game mode, begin accumulating crystals and get yourself one of these more powerful heroes. And this is why I don't make tier lists, because any tier list would put these more powerful heroes at the top, but it's not helpful for new players because you won't have any of these heroes or even access to the void to get them when you begin. And perhaps by telling you they're good, you'll make the mistake of going and pulling Crystals of Transcendence from your spheres to go and get one as soon as possible, and then you'll realize that was a really terrible mistake. So yes, that's why I don't make tier lists, and this video today, as I said, will talk you through who our heroes should be. So, without further ado, let's decide who our first E5 is going to be. When you begin the game, you'll be presented with something called the Chapter Mission. And as you go through here, you'll accumulate copies of a certain hero called Garuda. And Garuda is a very easy hero to obtain. In fact, so easy that she's probably going to be your first E5. A good early account looks a little bit like this, where you haven't upgraded many heroes, but you've gone and focused on the Garuda copies to build her up nice and quickly. In fact, I could even build my Garuda up to 10-star because if I claim this reward here, that's going to level me up. And as of course you level up, you can go ahead and attack campaign, beat waves in here, and as you do, you'll be able to get yourself more progress in that chapter mission and eventually accumulate more Garuda copies. Now, this Garuda that I have right now is 9-star, and that means I've needed 3 Garuda copies to get her to that point. But by beating that wave in campaign, I've now progressed further and unlocked myself another copy of Garuda. If I combine that with the one I already have in my bag, as you see it says 100 out of 50, which means I have 2 Garuda copies, that gives me my bonus additional Garuda copies I have here. If I take a 6-star Forest Puppet, you'll see that Garuda requires 2 copies of herself, a 6-star hero copy, but now here is where most accounts trip up. I need a 9-star. Now, if I built really good heroes like Garuda or any of the other heroes I'll mention later in this video, you'll kick yourself because you'll realize you don't want to feed those good heroes to Garuda because they'll disappear and they will go. So, unfortunately, I actually don't have a 9-star hero, and as I said earlier, you need 3 copies of a hero. If I look at my factions, I actually don't have 3 copies of anyone, so what I'm going to do now is wait. Wait until I get 3 copies of someone not very good. As you can see, I have 2 Starlights here, so if I get another Starlight, that would be great. But if I get 3 copies of anyone, I can then build them to 9-star, feed them to the Garuda, and make her to 10-star, and that will make me a nice bit of progress. So, Garuda will definitely be a potential option for you as a first E5. She's reliable, she does a few decent game modes, she's by no means the best, but she's the easiest to obtain. As well, you'll also notice if you do spend a little bit of money, you'll actually get yourself a Garuda copy as a reward from this, and there's also a bonus chest you can get in the cool events, which gives you another Garuda copy as well. Mine has disappeared as I have already spent money on this account, but no doubt you will see it. It's a little harder for free-to-play players to get additional Garuda copies, but you will be given 5 for free in the chapter mission, which is what you need for a 10-star, so that's going to be perfectly fine for you. Now, what if you do manage to get a bunch of 9-star heroes and 10-star heroes, enough to build an E5, but you have copies of someone else? As I said earlier, you need 9 copies of a hero to build. Well, the only other hero I want you to consider for today's strategy is Eloise. Eloise is a fantastic hero, one of the best, if not the best, early game heroes, and for today's strategy, she is going to be the main hero we focus on. She has a lot of survivability, can complete most game modes, and she is going to be crucial to making progress. So, if you do get 9 copies of Eloise, we absolutely want to build her as our first E5, but of course, it's okay to build Garuda if you can't. Now, as Eloise is going to be the focus, of course, once you've built that Garuda, Eloise is going to be our second E5, and hopefully you'll have enough Eloise copies and chests to make that a reality. So they're the first 2 E5s we're going to focus on, Eloise and Garuda. Of course, you can skip the Garuda step if you don't want to build her, so for all intents and purposes, continue from just Eloise as an E5. So once we've built Eloise, who do we want to build next? Well, really, the first thing we need to address is Eloise's weaknesses, and she's weak to crowd control, so that's stun, freeze, petrify, or anything that stops her from doing her abilities. It's annoying because it doesn't allow her to counterattack, and that's the way she heals and deals damage. So how can we do this? Well, there's a hero in the game called Ignis, and if we take a look at her final passive, you'll see that when Ignis dies, she'll heal the nearest ally and give them 100% of their HP back. As well, she'll give them 100 energy, which means they can do an active skill next time they attack, and more importantly, she gives them 100% of control immunity. That means if you put an Ignis next to Eloise in your formation, so Eloise goes in slot 1, Ignis goes in slot 2, Ignis will give that Eloise 100% control immunity. Now that means Eloise is not going to get CC'd by opponents and therefore will counterattack all the time. And one important thing about Eloise is we want her to get hit. That's really important. So another thing you can go ahead and focus on, that first artifact, a golden crown. Golden crown gives 18% attack, 25% HP, and 25% all damage reduction. So as soon as you get an opportunity to get a mysterious artifact chest from an event, whether you're free to play or a spender, the first artifact you want to pick up for this strategy is a golden crown. Give this to Eloise in just its normal form, and that will be fine. Now, one thing you might know about artifacts is that if you have multiple copies of them, you can make more powerful versions of themselves. So something people ask is, should you get more golden crowns to make that Eloise even more defensive? Because as you can see, she gains Deterrence of Majesty, which will give you even more all damage reduction. My advice is to not do this because it will slow down your artifact progress, because you will choose this instead of more important artifacts. And the more important artifact I would like you to go for after getting a golden crown is melodic strings. You're going to need 4 of these, and this boosts your damage massively. And as we've already got something defensive for Eloise, we're going to need something aggressive for the heroes we build next. So I want you to get 4 of these once you've got that 1 golden crown, so that way we can have a splendid melodic strings for lots of damage. So at this point, our team should have an Eloise and a 9-star Ignis, and perhaps a Garuda if you built her as your first E5. It's at this point, a lot of people say, well, who do I go for next and why? You may be distracted by other heroes you heard were good, but this next part is really, really important. There's a game mode here called the Celestial Island, which you've no doubt seen, but a lot of people, when they're new, don't realize there's a place called the Cloud Island because you cannot access it until you have a Void 4 hero. Now, a Void 4 hero might seem really far away, but by the time you get a Void 4 hero, you can only realistically build 3 or 4 E5s. Now, why is this important? Well, when you unlock the Cloud Island, it allows you to build a house. And in that house, you can place 4 additional heroes with your main hero, who is Void 4, to make that Void 4 hero even more powerful. Now, if we're focusing on Eloise, what we will want to do then is already have these heroes built by the time we get her to Void 4. Once she is Void 4, she'll get a massive boost in power then, not just for being Void 4, but by having these heroes to assist her in the Cloud Island as well. As you can see for Eloise, for Tenant Spot 1, she can choose Flora, Ithaca, or Onkirimaru. For Tenant Spot 2, Gustin, Jara, and Saja. For Tenant Spot 3, Tix, Mim, and Annabelle. And for Tenant Spot 4, Carrie, Amon-Ra, and Freya. Now the question that will come to you guys is, which of these do you choose to build next? Well, in my personal opinion, Tix is the most valuable. Tix is a mage and is able to deal lots of damage to opponents. Not only that, his active skill is able to silence and horrify opponents. Opponents that could potentially be problematic for Eloise. Now, the cool thing about silence is opponents will still do their basic attacks. It only stops them from doing their active skills. So their basic attack will still hit Eloise, allow her to counterattack, but she doesn't get the full force of their full energy attack. This is fantastic. As well, Tix is able to steal enemies' attacks, which weakens them even more, so helps Eloise with her survivability. As well, he's also a shadow hero, which means he can help Eloise, if she needs it, in Shadow Seal Land. And Eloise is fantastic at Shadow Seal Land and can potentially get all the way up to Seal Land 23 with her Tix buddy pretty easily. So that's going to be something really good for you, because when you do Seal Land and you go ahead and smash it, you'll gain really helpful resources to help upgrade the houses of your heroes, and more importantly, get 4 stars to go ahead and allow you to progress faster and build more heroes. These are great things to have. So the further you can get in Seal Land, the more resources you will get. On top of that, Tix is a fantastic use for our melodic strings, and he is able to defeat Aspen Dungeon to Death 100 if we give it to him. And Aspen Dungeon is a really important game mode because the further you get in Aspen Dungeon, the more progress you will make, and the higher the level you can make your heroes. So it's really important that you go ahead and try and do this with your Tix, as that's going to help him out a lot. Now that you've got an Eloise, a Tix, and a 9-star Ignis, your account should be coming on really nicely, and you should be able to make a lot of progress just with those 3 heroes together. You'll even make more progress if you've got a Garuda, so bonuses to you. Now, there's a few other things we can add to the account to make it more powerful, and I think the next step for us here for a hero should be Carrie in Tenants spot 4. Carrie is fantastic. Not only is she a ranger, so she shares abilities with Eloise in the guild, but she's also able to have other good uses as well. Carrie's active skill is able to steal energy from opponents. So this is fantastic for shutting down enemies, and again doesn't stop them from attacking. So they will still do their basic attacks and hit Eloise, but it also means Tix's silence stops them from doing that active skill, and then Carrie comes in and steals that energy from them. So it's really, really, really synergistic with Tix. Carrie is fantastic as well because she comes back after she dies, so that also helps to play towards Eloise's survivability, as it's likely the rest of your team will die and Eloise will be left as the last woman standing. So Carrie will work for you in that sense as well, as she will continue to support Eloise by coming back after she's dead. This makes Carrie a really, really, really powerful hero that you will use for the majority of the game. She's really fun, and yeah, she's going to help you massively. Even when you've unlocked the Void, she'll be doing great things there to help your Eloise. So building a Carrie is really important. However, Dark Heroes are really difficult to build and they're hard to get copies of. Thankfully, more and more often, we get something called a Glory Epic Hero Selection Chest, and this chest is able to give you light, dark, and normal heroes. Now, the temptation may be to pick up Eloise's from this early, and that's okay, but what I would recommend doing is saving enough of these so that you can go ahead and get Carrie from them, because dark heroes are significantly rarer to grab, but also, because they're so rare, it's hard to level them up. So if you're lucky in the Celestial Island Adventure mode, your ship can be sent on voyages to go ahead and obtain puppets. Now you can see here that my puppet is currently in search of a 9-star Dark puppet, and if a 9-star puppet in a place called Dagon's Abyss ever shows up, you should absolutely go for that. But if you're lucky, you may unlock an area that gives a 6-star Dark puppet, and that's a ton of dark food that can help you build your Carrie. So if you're ever presented with the opportunity to get a 6-star Dark puppet, I would absolutely recommend you go ahead and grab that, assuming the 9-star Dark is not available. That 6-star Dark puppet will be used to help level up your Carrie as soon as possible, and therefore get her on your account. So by now, if you've been following this guide, you should hopefully have a Carrie, a Tix, an Eloise, potentially a Garuda as well, and a 9-star Ignis. And this means something cool has happened for your account. When you build Carrie to 10-star, you get 2 additional 6-star Dark puppets, and you need those to go ahead and build a hero to 9-star in the Dark faction. When you build it to E3, you'll even get a 5-star Drake. That means you have 1 Drake copy and enough 6 stars to go ahead and build him to 9-star, so all you need then is additional dark food and 2 more Drakes. If you can go ahead and get those Drake copies, that means you can go ahead and build your account with a 9-star Drake, and at 9-star he unlocks this passive here called Defense Down, which reduces 100% of the armor, damage reduction, and all damage reduction block and dodge of the opponent he targets, and that's the opponent with the lowest HP. This allows your team to focus on that lowest HP enemy and get them killed quickly, or in boss fights, strip them of all their defenses, allowing your team to be more efficient in game modes such as Broken Spaces or the Void Arc. This is amazing, and if you can go ahead and use Drake in those game modes, he's going to be really good. So at this point, just like we built a 9-star Ignis to support the team, a 9-star Drake would be really good. Another hero to consider potentially building to 9-star would be a Waldeck. Waldeck has a really cool passive that when he dies, he gives your team Blood Frenzy. Blood Frenzy bleeds enemies and allows any bleeding enemy to heal you and increase your attack when they attack you. That means Eloise not only gets more healing, she gets more damage as well. So that's a fantastic support hero. And again, all you need to do is build him to 9-star. So if you do have 3 copies of Waldeck and some spare Abyss food lying around, you can build him and he'll be a great support for your team. By this point, you should hopefully have a fantastic team of 6 heroes. a 9-star Ignis, alongside that Eloise, allowing Eloise to be control immune, so that's 2 heroes there. We'll have Ticks, and we'll have Carrie, so that takes us to 4, and as well, you'll have a 9-star Drake and a 9-star Waldeck, or maybe even not run Drake on that team and run Garuda instead. Either way, that's a lot of firepower for your team, and you'll now be thinking, yeah, I've put together something good. At this point as well, if you built Garuda, you're probably fast approaching the point where Eloise will now be Void 4, and that's really good too, because that means you can go ahead and put her in the Cloud Island and give her that Ticks and Carrie as Tenants. But if you didn't build Garuda first, or maybe you've got room to squeeze out another E5, who should we build next? Well, of course, as I like to do tenant-focused building, we're going to be looking at tenants again for Eloise, and we either want to be looking at tenant spot 2 or tenant spot 1. And this is where some interesting questions arise. Do we choose tenant spot 1 because it contains Ithaca, a useful hero, or do we go with perhaps Onkiramaru, a hero who would arguably be better as a tenant for someone else? Or maybe Flora, who could potentially be useful later on for additional heroes as well. Onkiramaru and Flora are shared by lots of other heroes, so it can be pretty handy tenants, but Ithaca is a massive damage dealer, so it could help us in broken spaces if we were struggling with that. Tenant spot 2, on the other hand, offers Gustin, Jara, and Saja. Now, Jara, Saja, and Gustin aren't actually that good as heroes, so I think immediately we should ignore tenant spot 2 and focus on tenant spot 1. One thing, if you didn't know, assassins give lower bonuses as tenants than other heroes. That means Ithaca is the worst choice. But as well, she's the most useful for your account because she's able to deal lots of good damage. So here, I would say any of these are good, all for different reasons. And therefore, hold the thought of who this hero will be, because this choice will be informed by later decisions we make. Therefore, we need to start talking about Transcendence heroes. At this point, you're probably fast approaching 5 million crystals of Transcendence, which means it's almost time to choose our first Transcendence hero. Now, this is going to be a Fairy Queen Vesa. Fairy Queen Vesa is a fantastic hero, and she's going to support Eloise. One common mistake people make is as soon as they get a Transcendence hero is they try to focus their entire account on it if they've been focusing on an Eloise. I think this is unwise, as we've made this Eloise really powerful. Why would we want to go focus on someone new? Instead, Vesa offers healing and great support for the team, which means she's going to benefit Eloise and improve her defensiveness and allow the team to survive more. That improves our performance overall without her distracting from Eloise. Later on, though, Vesa will become your main hero, and one of her tenants, as you can see here, is a Flora in tenant spot 3. So I suppose you could argue that Flora is a good choice for our tenant spot 1 in our Eloise. But as well, don't forget you can undo heroes, and we have ages until we're going to be focusing on Vesa, because tenant spot 3 is where our Ticks is for our Eloise, so why on earth would we want that to conflict by going for Vesa as well? So perhaps Flora isn't the right choice. So why would I consider Onkiramaru? Well, look here. Sword Flash, the first ever Transcendence hero, uses Onkiramaru as a tenant, and so does Lord of Fear Aspen. You'll also notice that Lord of Fear Aspen is a tenant for Sword Flash, so now I'm looking really far in the future. When we have 2 Transcendence heroes, we might want to use Sword Flash and Lord of Fear Aspen together and give up on our Fairy Queen Vesa. Once you get to that point, if that's the path you want to take, I'd be very tempted to choose Onkiramaru, because that way he's going to be super useful in the future, and he's also going to be useful now by being a tenant for Eloise. So that's one reason to consider him. Overall, it doesn't really matter who we choose for Eloise, although I would rather go for Onkiramaru or Ithaca. They would be my main 2 choices, and I think if you chose Garuda as your first E5, there's a real strong argument to go for Onkiramaru because he's also a warrior. At this point, you probably haven't built an assassin, and therefore you don't need to invest in assassin's guild tech or armor yet. So to save yourself from stretching into assassin, you might actually prefer Onkiramaru as a choice. So if you've been keeping track at this point, your account will probably have Eloise, Ticks, Carrie, a 9-star Ignis, a 9-star Waldeck, and a 9-star Drake. And as well, you'll also have a Fairy Queen Vesa as your first Transcendence hero, and either Onkiramaru or Ithaca, and maybe a Flora as other heroes on your account as well. At this point, your Eloise will have loads of power as a Void 4 hero, and potentially even your Fairy Queen Vesa will be Void 4 as well. If she's not, keep saving Stellar Shards, and eventually you can build her to Void 4 as well. Should you use imprints on your other heroes? Well, I don't think so, not yet, because there's better things to use them on once we get that Void 4 Vesa built. Once you've got enough Stellar Shards for Void 4 Eloise and Void 4 Vesa, it's time to enter the Tree of Origin for Eloise, and this will upgrade her even more, making her really, really strong. Now for this, you are going to need to have beaten Campaign and unlocked the Void campaign. But with the team you have, that should definitely be possible. Make sure you're using that Ignis to give your Eloise control immunity against pesky waves like Tara, but you should be okay. So once you start establishing Spiritual Essence, or maybe you've even unlocked some for free from an event, you will go ahead and enter the Tree of Origin and use your Stellar Shards to upgrade this. That will make Eloise even stronger and allow you to clear even more game modes and get even more resources. One common pitfall is people get overexcited and want to Tree of Origin improve a Fairy Queen Vesa as well. I wouldn't do this straight away. I don't think it's wise. I think it will lock too much of your Stellar Shards away in your heroes because it's hard to undo the Tree of Origin, and therefore you won't be able to improve other heroes should you need to use them at any particular moment. So the flexibility of swapping imprints is really important, because if you didn't know, if I wanted to get these 3 imprint levels back, I can go ahead and spend 500 gems to do so. This is really helpful because maybe I don't want to use Olivia all the time, and therefore I could use somebody else and give them improvements instead. So that's why I wouldn't go ahead and Tree of Origin improve a Fairy Queen Vesa, and I would focus on Eloise. But now we need to start focusing on our new direction. Where do we go next? Well, that entirely depends on who our second Transcendence hero is going to be and how many artifacts we have. So here is where the branches split. And therefore, I'm going to stop today's video here, as we've already gone on for quite some time, and hopefully I've guided you through to your first Transcendence hero and a decent enough team, with lots of cool heroes for you to experiment with. You might want to consider some other heroes to build to 9-star as well, to support you, and those heroes include Rogan, as he gives you the ability Warpath Roar, which improves your speed, crit damage, attack, and crit, and even gives double bonuses to assassins, so if you chose to build Ithaca, could be really helpful for improving her damage. And also on the topic of Ithaca, why not consider a Delacium? Delacium is able to double the damage over time you deal by increasing its duration and allowing it to stack on top of itself, and this makes Ithaca deal a ton of damage. As well, he's able to spread it out to multiple enemies, so that damage over time inflicts even more damage to the opposing team. This is really good against boss fights. And also, by replicating abilities, he can potentially replicate Tix's attack steal as well, to make opponents deal no damage at all. And the final hero to maybe consider as well is a Heart Watcher. Heart Watcher is a humble hero who can't even be imprinted, but one cool thing about her is she is able to inflict Watcher marks on opponents. And as you can see from the description, Watcher marks will improve the damage taken when an opponent is attacked. And this allows your team to do loads of damage if you can stack up enough of these marks. So if you're facing really strong opponents with lots of HP, but you can allow that Heart Watcher to live because you've got Fairy Queen Vesa to heal you and keep you alive, and Tix's attack steal is coming out and weakening the opponent, you'll find that your Heart Watcher is able to go ahead and put those marks out and allow your team to deal a lot more damage. As well, she also reduces attack too, which is really good for improving the defensiveness of your team. So overall, we've gone on a massive journey today and taken ourselves all the way from the humble beginnings of our account right through to building our first Transcendence hero. We also talked about artifacts and wanted to get ourselves a golden crown and as well get ourselves 4 melodic strings to make that splendid. If you're now stuck and you don't know what other artifacts to go for, hit that subscribe button and we can go ahead and talk about more strategies in the future. But my recommendation would be to save 4 mysterious artifacts, and I'll tell you why in the next video. As well, guys, we're going to be branching paths here with 2 different options on where to go after you've built this Fairy Queen Vesa, so that should be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for more updates, folks, and hopefully with this small little series I'm putting together, I can guide you through all the tips and tricks to make the best account possible early on. And if you learn a lot of these principles and practices, you can use them for not heroes like Eloise. You could even do it with other heroes you want to build early, just making sure to build their tenants and focus towards your Transcendence heroes. More on that next time. Until then, though, don't forget to subscribe, leave your comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy idling!